So it's a pretty powerful time when we are transitioning. And I really would love to pass it over to Denny so that he can share a little bit about his system. We've been working with cycles and seasons now for about 9 months, having worked through a winter solstice and the fall equinox, and now coming up on the summer solstice. And each of these juncture points are really powerful energies. It's interesting that thousands of years ago, these powerful energies were utilized by people all over the world. They built unbelievable edifices to actually utilize the energy of the equinoxes and solstices. And in our time period, we really don't appreciate nature and the cycles and seasons. And in the RAYID system, there's actually an awful lot that we can gain by tapping into each one of the months, seasons. Even each hour of the day has powerful energies that we can actually utilize and engage with. So it's pretty amazing that we can follow a system literally throughout the day, throughout the year. And what we're finding is that each one of these energies we can use as part of our soul journey. So for example, right now we're in the 6-boy time in the Northern Hemisphere and the 6-girl time in the Southern Hemisphere. And we've been experiencing the 6-boy energy, which is power, and it's about what we're transmitting to the world, and it's about energizing all of the father's side of the family, the males on the father's side of the family, and the 2, 4, and 6. And it doesn't matter if you don't necessarily understand the RAYID system. We'll start to talk about it, but the key is we're actually at a high point. It's the highest light of the day. It's the most powerful energy. And we're now shifting, we will be shifting over from masculine energies to feminine energies starting tomorrow morning. So it's a really auspicious time to be really looking at lots of things. First of all, what we've been transmitting into the world, what we actually want to continue to engage in, what we want to remember going forward into this next month. But it's also looking at that cross point between the masculine energies and the feminine energies. So really looking at how we can engage those energies and how we feel about them. So I'm going to pass it over to Denny for a little bit because I'd like him to share with you a little bit about this system and what the solstice means, and a little bit about the cycles and seasons. We'll talk for a little bit, but we're also would love to hear from you what kinds of questions you might have, what you might be interested in learning, and we'll be happy to answer all your questions. All right, Denny.
Wow, thank you for tuning in and being willing to be here. The RAYID system really started with the iris. And for me, the iris started out with just 2 parts. It started out with a constrictive jewel principle combined with a flower expansive principle. And these 2 opposites made up all of the constitutions. One of the other derivatives was the kinesthetic function, the very physical function, opposite the shaker pattern. So you had jewel, flower, stream, and shaker. Now, those of you who know the iris patterns, you know what those mean, and you can download the what the eye reveals from the website. It costs nothing. You can donate if you want, but all of the information about the iris, basic fundamentals of it, is there. Then the composite began with the understanding of the sequences of the family tree, meaning that the sequences of the family tree, there were 6 boys that were possible, 6 girls that are possible, and their basic forms of opposites. We linked these opposites. You can see behind Randy, if you're looking at her screen in the moment. It shows you the 6 boys, 6 girls there. Now, what we also have is that we're learning how to unify these opposites. The unification of the opposites really means wherever there is a male-female challenge in the mother and father's family, those challenges, stresses, are remembered and create protein crystals called methylation for future generations, or epigenetic molecules of memory. So what we're interested in is being able to accelerate our feeling experience and to be able to use that feeling experience to feel more. And in the process of feeling more, align it to a specific pathway. And that pathway would be, for me, a pathway of truth. And the process of being able to use the experience of truth to discover the divine influences and to utilize divine guidance to increase the capacity to feel. So all that really means is the primary goal is to feel, to change, and to receive divine guidance. Now that, to me, I just described the autumn, and I also described what we call the protocol. So in this month, we are now arriving, those of you that have been practicing, we're arriving after 9 months of practice. What does practice look like? Starting in the autumn, we start everything in the autumn season. So for a month, we go into what we call the feeling experience, and we correspond each one of the months of the year to a different gland, a different organ, a different body system, a different grandparent. So we basically are moving toward aligning all of the grandparents and glands and organs and aligning them in the mother's family with the father's family, and doing our best to experience and remove the impediments of previous emotional memory. So we're doing our best to become, if you will, in the beginning, personally responsible for the feelings that we have. And the goal in the first step is to experience a 100% responsibility for all of the triggers and feelings inside me, and a 100% responsibility for all the symptoms in my physical body, mind, and for the condition of my own soul. I am 100% responsible for experiencing, realizing, and changing that. And then along the way, we also discover what we call the principle of agency, which is, yes, I need to be responsible, but I'm also involved in relationships with other people. And these relationships with other people, they become the means by which I discover those parts inside of me that still need to be acknowledged, reconciled, experienced, or released. So social dynamics becomes our mirror to experience more. So every month we increase our desire to feel, we accelerate our desire to change, we increase our willingness to receive divine input according to whatever origin or philosophy or religion that you want to use on your own. So we have a desire to receive divine input from a divine perspective. In my case, I desire to receive the divinity experience from the truth, from the divine. And then that is linked into each month of the year. So each set of 3 months can be unified into a cohesive unit. So the experience of what we call the first month of autumn, the second month of autumn, and the third month of autumn, they produce a season of 3 months. It is possible, when we desire to do so, to unify each one of those months to operate as a unit together. Then in the second set of 3 months at the winter solstice, we have 3 months of 3 male energies. And by that, I mean, Anytime the day length is increasing, we call that ascending. Anytime the energy is rising or the day length is increasing, it's a masculine principle. So for 6 months, we follow the increase of the rising light. And now tomorrow morning on the East Coast time at 5:13 or thereabouts, we are at the peak of the summer solstice. So for 6 months, we've been traveling through 6 different types of male energies. 3 of them from the mother's side. That's the 3 months of winter. At the equinox, the 3 from the mother's side cross over into the 3 from the father's side. And the 3 from the father's side, they represent the acceleration of emotional, physical fire. Fire in the belly, fire in the heart, fire in the head. They are the unification of fire on the masculine side of the family. At the very peak, which is tomorrow morning, it now starts a 6-month journey of passing through 6 females of the family tree. Those 3 from the father's side, the first, second, and third month of summer. The 3 from the mother's side, the first, second, and third month of autumn. Those 6 are mirrored to the 6 on the father's side. So the solstice unifies all the men in the family tree with all of the women in the family tree. That's a lot to consider, but that's what we're engaged in. So month by month, we will examine what this looks like. I'm going to turn it back over to Randy so that she might add some comments. Randy, if you'd like.
Sure. So we began this journey in September because we realized that September was really when it all began with that 2 girl. And Denny mentioned the feeling, and that's really what the number 2 girl represents. And so if you think about it from this standpoint, I know it can get confusing when you hear the 3 girls and the 3 boys and from the father's side and then from the mother's side. And again, all of this you can find on the RAYID Facebook page, but above me at the very top there is really just the quick visual of the seasons of the year. So there's 4 seasons, but then there's 12 months. And so each 3-month cluster in a season corresponds to different birth order positions, different grandparents in the family tree, but ultimately different energies. So if we think of ourselves as souls that want to aspire to truth, that want to improve ourselves, we want to be conscious and aware, and we want to strive towards healthier and more loving attributes, that curve that you see up there is one path to get there. So we can utilize these energies that are available at each month, but also every 2 hours throughout the day to grow, literally. We want to take that feeling, and because we started in September, which is the 2 girl feeling, we want to actually feel into each one of these energies. So Denny took you through in the fall, it's the 2, 4, and 6 girls on the mother's side, which is September, October, November, but those feelings have different attributes. So it's really the deeply empathic feeling to really feel, to let go, to transform, to be willing to change for the 4 girl. And then the 6 girl is actually asking for divine truth and being connected to divinity. As he mentioned, right at that winter solstice, we now moved into, in January, February, March, into the boys on the mother's side of the family, which you can see on the family tree. And those each have different attributes. The 1 boy is inspiration. The 3 boy is about truth and knowledge. The 5 boy is about our free will and creating something. So with part of switching from the mother's side to the on the mother's side, the boys and the girls. And again, all of this is mapped out. You don't have to know all of this. I'm just talking it through so you get a feel for, what's happening in this monthly or seasonally seasonal system. You can actually tap into those feelings and feel into, okay, well, what is my free will choosing to do? What am I contributing to the world? What's my purpose? And then in the springtime, so that was in the end of March, but then in the last 3 months of spring has really been about energizing, as Denny mentioned, that we're taking those energies of the males on now the father's side of the family, the 2, 4, 6 boys, if you will, and we're taking that drive from the fire in the belly of like, I'm going to take who I am and what I want to create out into the world. Well, now I also want to share that with others at the heart. And then what am I going to really lead others in at the 6th boy? And that's really where we are now, is that culmination of all those birth orders that we just talked about of, okay, what am I choosing to do and what am I putting out there? And now we're going to drop into the women, the female energies, both on the father's side and the mother's side, and we can feel into and work with those energies. But because the solstice is transitioning, or the summer solstice is transitioning, and actually the winter as well, you're transitioning from more feminine energies in the winter to masculine. And now we're going from those masculine, those strong energies to the feminine energies, but even the feminine energies of the first 3 months of June, July, and August, those are the women on the father's side of the family. So they have a yang quality and strong quality. But the first girl, which is what we're entering into, is the one that is all about memory, all about replication. It's about taking whatever's come over those last 9 months and birthing it literally into what's going to be moved forward in that family tree going forward. So it's an interesting time to really even consider the fact that, oh, wow, we're moving from the male side to the female side, but who am I, what am I transmitting, and what do I want to replicate? And going into this one girl time, for me, it's about looking at, okay, what have my beliefs been? What have my habituated patterns been? What have I been transmitting from that 6th boy? What have I been putting out there in the world? And then what do I actually want to put out there? So at this solstice time, it's a key time to really look at those things and then be able to choose what we're going to be doing in the summer months over the next 3 months. And the one girl, which is this next month, is all about your family, kind of who you show up with in your small world, but then you want to take it to July, which is the 3rd girl. That's more about community and how we're going to be putting those attributes and our gifts out into that community. And then the 5 girl is how we would be bringing who we are out into a global world for all. So if you think about it from that standpoint, each one of these months and each one of these birth order positions are an opportunity to actually feel into the different energies of those months. But it's almost like a map for the journey of the soul to really, let's take just this chunk. Let's look at this piece and let me feel into all the aspects that I've been and who I've been in my family, because that's really what the one girl is. And we're going into the summer months where we tend to be around family and have get-togethers. So it's an interesting time to really look at how we've been. All of this we have up on the Facebook website too. So there's visuals that help a lot with understanding the system. And then every single day I've been posting little snippets of what each one of these birth order positions represent and are, so that you can start to get a feel for, oh, what does it feel like to be the sixth boy? What does that really mean? And then see if you can individually aspire to maybe have more truth in your life, which is the three boy. Look at how you are leading and how you can actually maybe lead better, or if with the one girl month, how can you take care of others and yourself? Those are just a couple of things to consider. Denny, did you want to add anything to what I was just talking about?
Well, maybe before we take some questions, let me just do a little personal summary of something.
Sure.
For me, everything that exists is a perfect reflection of divine order. So everything that is occurring, every hour of the day, every season of the year, every year of life, is progressing according to a divine order. And it may not look like it to the world around you as you see chaos, pain, and suffering, but every time I take that reflection into and I examine it with my own feelings, and I have a sincere desire to want to feel, and a sincere desire to want to change, and I have a sincere desire to want to be guided, I will be guided to the experience of every single feeling that I need to feel. These feelings may have come to us from collective consciousness at one time. They may have come to us from our genetic family tree. They may come to us from our parents. They may have come to us from guardians and teachers in our childhood. But the majority of the ones that are most important are the ones that we have put there with our own will. It's hard to believe that all of the physical, emotional symptoms that we go through are the direct use of our will. We're not victims to other people's experiences or emotions. They're influences. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, collective consciousness, they're influences. I can decide for myself how I want to choose to respond to whatever trigger that comes to me. So the goal is to keep feeling more with a sincere desire to change and be guided to what you're denying in some form or another. So the way we do that is we increase it every month. You take the next month and you increase it again. You take the next month and you increase it again. And you have a sincere desire to want to feel every feeling, known or unknown to you, denied or realized. That's the method that we're working from. It's not easy, by the way, that if you step on this pathway, you're going to be inundated at times with very strong feelings from different sources, but they will come in exactly the right order that you need them to come. They'll come precisely at the time of the day or the season of the year to help you maximize your ability to be able to feel or transform it or release it or say, no, that's not mine. That belongs to my mother. That belongs to my grandmother. No, you don't have to take on everything your family tree gave you. But there are certain ones that you are responsible for experiencing. And those are mostly how you chose to react to things in the past, choices you've made. So that's a nutshell overview for me describing that. There's a lot to it, but we'd like to, at this time, take a moment to give you the opportunity to ask a question about the system or what we do or how we do it, or some question about a process or symptom in your life that we might reflect back to you what that may be about. Are there any questions from any of you that you'd like to present to us for now? Are we unmuted there now?
Julie has a question, so I can unmute her.
Julie? Julie, can you hear us?
Okay, now do you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Um, So I've been doing the postures for about 2.5 months now with a small group of friends, new friends, and I'm already experiencing quite dramatically the increase of my desire just by virtue of doing the postures, and also the law of attraction. And Ednelli told me that this would happen. And she actually said specifically at 3 months, it'll really be a full on, and it happened that way. And I feel myself, as much as I know how to, inviting all of that experience to keep coming. My question is, with the seasonal rhythms and increase, is that something that naturally happens, or are you suggesting that you actually consciously work to increase your desire? And does the law of attraction also increase inside of that? It seems like it will.
The law of attraction will keep coming, and it will keep increasing according to your capacity to be willing and your desire to receive it. But just to back it up a bit, you mentioned something we haven't discussed yet, which is how the 4 different primary energies or constitutions of the rayed iris that we mentioned before, which was the jewel, the flower, the stream, and the shaker, they have different qualities of energy in them. So there are 4 postures that we recommend that you can experiment with if you choose to. And those 4 postures we have outlined on a video. They basically are very simple postures, gathering the energies from above and the energies from below, and the masculine and feminine principles in the heart. But anytime you do something and you do it for 3 days in a row, the effect of that is going to be remembered. Now, if you start to do the same thing just a few seconds in a day, and you do it for a week, and then you do it for a month, the memory is going to last longer. If you have an emotional desire to want to experiment and grow, and you do something for 3 months in a row, it starts to lock into long-term memory. So what is the most personal, the most sacred, the most desired feeling that you might want to feel? It could be happiness, it could be joy, laughter, celebration, it could be health, it could be relationship. You know, by the way, you can change it when you want to. But if you do something with postures, engaging your body and your feelings, and you do that for 3 months, it now sets in a cycle of deeper embodiment. Then if you add in another set of 3 months, it goes deeper. If you add in another set of 3 months or 9 months, 3 sets of 3 increases, almost like gestation. It brings into embodiment stronger forces according to your desire. Meaning, what was the thing that you intended? What did you want? What did you desire? What are you building? Where are you going? You can make these yourself, and you have the right to experiment with one and change to another. You have the right to have more than one if you want. My suggestion is just give yourself an interesting experience and try a single strong feeling for a month. It doesn't have to be a 4-hour meditation every day. It can be simply 15 seconds of feeling your desire to love truth. I have a sincere desire to want to love truth more. Later on, you can define where that truth comes from or what it means to you or how it affects you. But you can build a sincere desire to care, to have compassion, to understand, to receive love. If you just do that consistently over a period of time, we're saying that time exists as the continuation and the acceleration of your growth. So that every sunset is meaningful. Every sunrise is meaningful. So the sincere desire to acknowledge who you are at an hour before sunrise, and then give that feeling over to the sunrise, is actually accelerating your desire to be present. For me, everything in nature is divine. Everything that is existence, whether it's in nature or in the cosmos, exists because of divine order. It only exists because it has a divine relationship. So even things that are uncomfortable or ugly or painful, they're the result of human choice. So the only thing that you see that's not pretty is usually caused by a person or a group of people. So the only way through this is to experience more people. The only way to change is to experience our feelings about people. So that's pretty much for me what we do. We want to experience all of the visible and invisible feelings of our family tree. We want to receive what's loving. We want to process what we need to and leave what's not ours. So to be able to find that, sometimes you have to have a sincere desire to want to know, what is it I am? Who am I? Help me find out who I am. Show me the pathway. You can make it whatever definition you want and then change it when you want to. I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely.
It's also a really good idea to just at sunrise and sunset. I mean, just to start thinking about just those times at sunrise, that's thinking about, okay, who am I? What are my aspirations? Okay, what am I going to be putting out into the world today? I mean, and what's my intention even for the day? So just to even pause and acknowledge the sunrise as really part of God's divine plan, and each one of us is part of that as well. So can we really just feel into that energy and choose to kind of ride the wave of the sunrise? Sunset too, that's when we're kind of going into the quieter space. That's that feeling of the two girls. So can we take the feeling of the whole day, and then at sunset, can we now go into the quiet space and maybe just contemplate on the day and just feel, for ourselves, for others, and just take a few moments, even 10 seconds, to just feel others, whether it's, people you worked with or your family, but really just to take a moment to feel. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the postures. We don't always go into them, but they can be very powerful. And it's just those four postures: the arms up, and then down, and then straight down, and then going to this point. And you can see them on the website, but sometimes I don't have time to go through the postures, and I'll just visualize them. And it immediately, from having done them for the last year, it's like, okay, when I just visualize this, it's my reminder, yes, the divine is there. I can actually feel the energy of the divine. And then when I bring my hands here, I want to come from my heart. I want to be heart-centered in everything I do. So, if you think of it, even to just do that once or twice throughout the day, to just remember that, okay, divine heart, that's who I am.
More questions?
I have another question.
Okay.
Can you explain how you recognize, or just help me understand, for me, a number 6 girl, how my great-grandmother, my mother's father's mother, has a special relationship with me in terms of my emotional, what I got from my family, my ancestry. If that's correct, that's what I'm understanding from the map.
What Julie is describing is that she is from a large family, and she's the 6th daughter. So the 6th daughter has a specific lineage, and that lineage in science would be called a methylation line, What that means is that the specific stress-oriented memories, they come from the grandparents and the great-grandparents, but we are, as based on our gender number in our family, we're primarily deriving the majority of the unresolved emotional stress primarily from one or two grandparents in the family tree. We have all the other ones too that seem to rotate through at other times, but we sometimes keep some of them in the family tree that we keep in the background, and we give them on to our children or our grandchildren, or they come out in another form of our life at a different stage of our maturation. And some of them come out in our 20s, different one comes out in our 30s or 40s or 50s. The arrival of unresolved emotions from the family tree now produce social triggers from people around you who know exactly how to trigger a particular emotion that was actually a memory that your great grandfather or great grandmother had. In Julie's case, we're describing number 6 girl, which is the mother's father's mother. That corresponds to the skin, that corresponds to the pineal. It also corresponds to a spirituality, what her personal feeling was around the divine functions. So issues around religion come up, and other issues around what we call 6. 6 is in the brain. The body systems are arranged with 6 being in the head, 5 being in the throat, 4 being in the heart or chest, 3 in the solar plexus, 4 in the belly, 1 in the pelvic cavity. Yes, these are chakra-like positions that correspond to the family tree. All of the chakra positions have to do with relationships between people, either marriages or grandparents or children, and they're all woven together. I'm sorry, but everywhere you go, you take your family with you. As much as you'd like to think that you're done with them in some form or another, you won't be done with your father or mother for the rest of your life, because you'll be processing feelings that come through your mother's side of the family and processing feelings that come through your father's side of the family. And you'll be dealing with father and mother principles all the way up to divine feminine and divine masculine. So you'll have these gradually increasing feelings of what does it mean to have a female form of mother that goes into feelings and a father form that goes into action. So these are all about family dynamics. For me, everything going on inside of us is about family dynamics. However narrow it is to be a biological family, we have a very large social family, and we have a very large divine family, self and others and all. And eventually how we fit into this really depends on how we process every single moment. Yoicks.
Can I ask a follow-up with that, Denny?
Sure, Julie.
Thanks. How might I use this awareness that I have a particular connection with my great-grandmother to help me or to further my understanding of myself? It seems like just being aware generally that I'm a product of my ancestry to a large degree, and then how do I work with that? But is there some particular way I can work with my great-grandmother to?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
You can pause, and we can all do this. You can do a little simple exercise. And let me ask this to everyone, as with Julie, your mother's father's mother, your great-grandmother. On a scale from 1 to 100, how much do you currently love her?
I don't know her.
How much do you currently know her?
Yeah, I don't.
Well, that's not true, because you do.
Okay.
Because the feelings of her are existing inside you, and she gave you genetic composition that changed your body shape and the shape of your face and the shape of your iris and all the patterns in there. Yes, you're living a manifestation of many of the unresolved feelings that this great grandmother had. So I would suggest that you just try the magic words. You ready? Thank you for being my grandmother.
Thank you for being my grandmother.
I never got to meet you personally that you know of. Maybe you did. I met some of mine, but that's a whole nother story. I never got to know you, but I sincerely am thankful for all the things that you brought to me that I don't know anything about. Thank you for all the beautiful things that there may be. Thank you for the many lessons. And now I'm going to look at every single lesson that comes to me, and I'm going to make a choice now about my feelings. You just simply said thank you to your great grandmother. Now, if you want to increase your feeling of what a 6 girl feels like, later on, you're going to feel it's the feeling of falling snow coming out of the moonlight. Pristine silence giving birth to creation. How would you define, at a higher level, how would you define your divine feminine? However you would define your divine feminine, it has to come through your upper boundaries of how you actually feel about your great grandmother, number 6. Because you might have a desire for divine feminine, but inside you are all these impediments which stop you from actually receiving it.
Okay.
And then you find out, in order to feel the divine feminine, I need to feel my own feelings. I need to feel my feelings towards someone else. I need to feel my feelings toward other people in general. I need to examine my feelings relative to spirituality and religion. And you'll find out that there's a whole bunch of things along that one line. Sooner or later, you have the opportunity to change. And oh, by the way, that time period, for those of you who are interested, it's the time period between 10 p.m. at night and midnight. That 2-hour segment is when most of us are actually in the sleep state, talking to the divine anyway, or acting out whatever other desire that you set in motion. Now that's the time period in the southern hemisphere that is the winter solstice. So right now the southern hemisphere is experiencing the last few hours of that 6 girl quality of the pristine feminine. And then in just another day, it goes off to another her child, her son, mother's father. That mother's father, now most of you would go, wow, maybe you met your mother's father, maybe you didn't. But tomorrow it starts in the southern hemisphere with mother's father. In the northern hemisphere, it's your father's mother. Now I could ask you on a scale from 1 to 100, how much do you love your father's mother? And maybe you met her, maybe you didn't, maybe you like her, maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. Whatever your number is now, increase your affection for her. No matter which one it is, your only choice really is to love them more. Because each one of them is going to correspond to a mirrored back to you of something that you need to feel. So let me pause here, Julie, and check and see if we have other questions. Or Brandy, do you have an input?
I was just going to comment. What's so interesting about this whole system is you've got different times of day, different months, different seasons corresponding to those different energies, but they're also different grandparents. So you've got 12 different grandparents that you can actually feel like they actually are people. So another way to access those feelings and energies is to really think about each month as a different person and to really connect with them. And just as simple as Denny said, to just say thank you for being there. And if we think about it, all of our grandparents and great grandparents have had a much harder time. I mean, I know it probably seems like things are not great right now, but their lives were much harder. And the things that they went through were probably pretty challenging. So really to acknowledge them and what they went through, thank them, it actually brings and elevates our feeling for others. So just by touching into those grandparents and appreciating the fact that they went through whatever they did and were here is, I think, very powerful. So you might consider even doing that, each month, corresponding to that grandparent, to just feel that grandparent and just be thankful for that grandparent each month.
So let me just take you to where we are in the moment, which is this is the last few hours of the highest light of the year. So if you would consider the implications that this is the longest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. This is the longest night in the Southern Hemisphere. In the Northern Hemisphere, you might ask yourself, would you like to know every misuse of energy that you've ever transmitted in your entire life? Do you have a sincere desire to want to be completely responsible for every feeling that you've ever transmitted, known or unknown to you, your entire life? That's what this is really about. The highest energy at the top of the head, corresponding to the pituitary, is what are you transmitting? Well, guess what you're actually transmitting? All of the false belief systems that you've ever been endowed with by any part of your family tree. There's about 200 different belief systems that people have in some form. And whatever you believe you're doing right now, just because you're holding them with every breath, you're actually transmitting them into collective or mass consciousness. So for every false belief system that we are transmitting, there is an automatic rebound, cause-effect result. There is an automatic trigger that comes back to us. So my suggestion is your father's mother's father. Your father's mother's father. That corresponds to the 6-boy masculine pituitary fire in the brain. He's the one that's primarily you transmitting. That's the 6-boy head. That's where we are right now. Tomorrow morning, that turns over to his daughter, father's mother. That changes now. For 6 months, you go through all the women in your family tree one at a time. I'm suggesting that it would be to your benefit to say thank you every month and to appreciate the gland, the organ, the body system that corresponds to not just the chakra system that you are so familiar with, but to the gland, the organ, and the feeling associated with that location. For example, the second month of summer, that's called the 3-girl month. That's your father's father's mother. That corresponds to the plant kingdom, the liver. That corresponds to regeneration. That corresponds to wisdom, to harmony, to justice, to social phenomenon. It corresponds to your solar plexus. It is primarily influenced by one great-grandmother, your father's father's mother. On a scale from 1 to 100, how much do you know her? How much do you love her? So I'm saying that by the sincere desire to at least experiment or examine, I'm not suggesting that you go into ancestral worship. I'm suggesting that you go into helping yourself examine and release the things that you want to release and to be responsible for the things you're still transmitting.
Can I ask about that, Demi?
Okay.
Are you still am I still transmitting even though my beliefs have changed radically? Does that not matter, or how much does that change what I'm transmitting? from my ancestors.
If the belief corresponded to that location and you've changed radically, then your belief changes in that location. So for example, how do you feel about tradition? How do you feel about the past? How do you feel about touch? How do you feel about morality? How do you feel about ethics? This is all primarily located in one location. It's the one that corresponds to the use of power in the solar plexus. It merges over with the pancreas. So you have the pancreas on one side, you have the liver on the other side, and they have a relationship. It is different parts of the family tree that work with truth, that produce wisdom. So if you really change, that place is going to change. The average person has far more there than they ever realize. Randy, you want to comment?
No, there's some questions in the chat, so I figured I'll just read them. Somebody asked about if you're the only child or what about step siblings? You want to address that?
You can if you want.
Doesn't matter if you're an only child. That just means that you're the number one girl or boy of that family. And step siblings, they matter because the system all goes on the fathers by the father's children. So if they're step siblings, but from other children your mother had, then it doesn't quite count. You want to be looking at it from all the children from your father. If they didn't live with you, then they're going to have less of an impact. If they live with you, and then you're going to have a social impact from them. Although, again, it doesn't really matter so much about what you are, although most people want to learn about that. Part of the system is actually looking at each one of these energies yourself and kind of feeling into, am I that? Am I not that? What aspects of this individual do I want to take on? And or what beliefs do I have that I want to let go of? Just a couple of key points. And then, did you want to add anything about that, Denny? Because there's one other question.
All right, the other question then. Now,
does it matter that ancestors might have come from the southern hemisphere and now are living in the northern hemisphere? Does it really matter where you are living, or does it matter where you came from?
well, that's an intriguing question, but yes, I think it always matters. I think it would be in some way a mysterious benefit to have your parents from the southern hemisphere also living in the northern hemisphere. I think there's a advantage to becoming global, to being able to this stage of life is what we're really looking at, is how we are become global. COVID was a great unifier of the world through one specific feeling, not necessarily easy, but it's a global experience. So I don't know the specific effect of having your parents be from one hemisphere or the other. I would suggest that you just emotionally embrace whatever lessons there are and sincerely desire to keep increasing your love of truth. And by that, I mean every hour, if you have 10 seconds to just feel and increase your desire to know the truth about. Show me the truth about what I'm denying is a good one. Show me everything I'm denying and everything I've ever denied about my father. Show me everything I've ever denied about my mother. And it will start to come, by the way. And the importance of being able to do that is it gives you the opportunity to work through being a victim of your parents, and you're not, by the way. You're not a victim, you're not a hostage. You're not designed to stay enmeshed with your parents. They are souls like you that you're designed to let them go. Your real family turns out to be much bigger than them. You can include them in your family because they're also brothers and sisters of that same family. But the family dynamics is a starting point. We oftentimes call that step number 1. That involves the first 2 chakras of the body. Step number 3 and 4 is the solar plexus and the heart. Step number 5 and 6 is the throat and the head. And there are other ones, but these are the primary rungs of the ladder as we rise. Are there other questions? I think we have a few more minutes before we go.
There was another question too about what if family members weren't there? So for example, if a father was absent or a mother was absent, or if you didn't even have a relationship with them, you know, what can you do about that? Or does that have an impact?
Oh my goodness. Yes, it has an impact. No, you can't deny it. You can't say because my father wasn't there and I never met him, I have no feelings. When the reality is you have very deep personal feelings you've yet to fully experience about your own masculinity or your own capacity to access these 6 different parts of your father's family has to do about your own father. So yes, there's a very important significance. And then on your mother's side, well, I have to tell you, maybe, and this is just a personal estimate, 80% of all of your emotional biochemical issues are regulated by your relationship to your mother's family. So if you don't really have a relationship with your mother, I would suggest that you're living in denial, because you are. Every time you're digesting food and every time your kidney works or your spleen works or your lungs breathe, every time your bowels work, you're having a relationship to your mother. Because the primary grandmothers on your mother's side, they're the cleaners of the body. They correspond to the skin, the lungs, the spleen, the kidney, the bladder, the bowels. Yes, you're having a relationship with those women on your mother's side of the family every single moment. So my suggestion is, I would suggest you fall in love with them and say, thank you for that one. Oh, by the way, no, I think that one belongs to you. And you just learn how to go, oh, okay, well, thank you for the gift of beauty, or thank you for the gift of this, or thank you for this, but now let me feel about that jealousy that you might have. So if you find yourself, by the way, which is a pancreatic issue, if you find yourself in a jealous, controlling situation, yeah, you might want to examine your own feelings, because there's probably a fish hook in there that you have that your great grandmother gave you that corresponds to the relationship to the pancreas. And now anybody that comes by and triggers you with jealousy is actually because of your own unresolved feelings on your mother's side of the family. So this is just a brief overview, by the way. This is designed to be something of an introductory evening, and there's a lot of things, but I would really like to get you to the better part of this before you go. The better part of it is the best way out of this is the people that you see around you. I'm saying the best way through all of this is to learn to care about the people around you. The best way through it is to have a friend. If you look at yourself, if you have 5 good friends in the whole world, you're probably pretty lucky. If you have 5 really good lifelong friends, I'm suggesting you might intentionally make some more. You might increase your love of those old friends. Just, you know, I met a friend here just a few weeks ago. I haven't seen for 50 years. He was my roommate in college. And we went back and we had a little meeting. I spent 6 hours with him and we opened up some things, cleared some things, remembered some things I'd forgotten about. And we're in an ongoing increase of our friendship. The program we'd like to offer you is called Gifting Friends. We invite you to want to be a friend. Now, why would I want to do that? because somewhere inside of you is a authentic uniqueness no other soul has. If I can call you friend, and I can receive your friendship and give you mine, the two of us now have a different mathematics. If I practice feeling you and you practice receiving me and I practice receiving you, and we do that for 10 seconds, 3 times a day, I want to know what your authentic soul is composed of, because you have something I do not have. If I can emotionally feel you, enjoy you, then I'm gifting you with my time and attention, even if it's only 15 seconds. Now, what I'm doing with a group of friends is 15 seconds once a day, which is about 2 breaths, by the way. I take one person in my group and I practice a feeling with them of all the feelings I'm going through, and I share, and I've told them it's coming, they know it's coming, and we're practicing this together. To me, that's our way through this. If we combine everybody in this little group, everybody was practicing that with everyone else, life is going to get better. The way out of this is with each other. So the math, when you combine 2 or 3, it's not 3, it's maybe 12. You combine a 4th or a 5th, it might be 19 or 30 times or 90 times stronger, because we do it together. Now, I'm suggesting if you want to do that, start now. And then for certain, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, join us at the next equinox and practice for a month, just appreciating one grandmother. I know it sounds like a lot, but just one grandmother for a month. Every week we go through another quality of that particular location. And on the 2nd month of the autumn, we go to her mother. Now, when you combine 2 women who actually like each other, a different energy begins to move. When you get the mother's mother to connect to her mother, mother's mother's mother, you now have 2 very powerful influences that correspond to 6 p.m. in the evening to 10 o'clock at night. A very powerful transition from the material world into the spirit world, because usually between 8 and 10, you go from being vertical to being horizontal. At 10 o'clock, guess where you get to go? Out of here. Where are you going to go? It's your choice. So I suggest when you're going off to bed, you make a choice. Make a choice. You're going to bed and you go, I'd really like to know this about that. I'd like to experience the truth about this. I want to know more. Whatever you want to make, just put it in your little target, go to bed. Now that means you can enter into the spirit world like an arrow from a bow. You have to aim it and let it go. And then in the spirit world, next comes the inspiration at midnight. At midnight begins the return back to the body. Between midnight and 2 is a lung meridian breath function. You're coming back. Between 2 and 4, by the way, you might as well get used to, between 2 and 4, you're going to start waking up more. Some people go, oh my goodness, it's 3 in the morning. I should be asleep. If you wake up, use it. Say thank you first. Don't be angry first, frustrated first. I'm awake. Must be time for me to work on whomever you want to work on. In that last 2 hours before sunrise, it's your time. 2 hours before sunrise, you get to slip right into the slot, which is your authentic use of free will. Only you can use that. So if you were to see 1,000 wild horses running by and you could take your feeling and you could give it to 1,000 golden horses going by, they would empower that. That's called sunrise. You make a choice. It is empowered by your choice. You're mobilizing. Every hour shows you what comes in the next hour if you make a choice. So I know it's a lot to consider, but you're welcome to come through. Love to call you friend. Love to share some of these wild and crazy things. And oh, by the way, we have a lot more graphics than this.
Yes.
We have a lot to share. We'd love to share it. And you should know that in the sharing that we offer, there is no expectation that you pay for anything. We're not a marketing team trying to sell you something. We don't do downlines or this or that, or we don't want a percentage of your grandchildren's wealth. You know, we don't want any of that, right? We want to be able to give freely without expectation. If you have a desire to want to share and compensate in some way, then you can donate, but there is no expectation that you ever need to. I know that sounds odd. We want to give away all the information we have as freely as possible, and you are welcome to take all of the information, claim it, trademark it, give it away, sell it. You can do whatever you want with that. That's your free will. So if we offer graphics like the one you see behind Randy, if you see graphics like that, you can duplicate it and sell it if you want. Or you can give it away, because we have. We give it to you. It's your choice what you do with it. We don't want to regulate it, certify it, make you qualify, take a test and say, no, you're no good. You do anything you want with it.
I think the key is we really want people to just play with us. And this system is all about a divine order. And it's about, just to kind of summarize a couple of key points, is really we can feel, we can grow, and we can share with each other. So just even if you did a couple of little things, I like what Denny said about, you know, just before you go to bed, you know, I really want to know the truth about this or that. And I've noticed when I get stuck on a problem or something's bothering me, I'll kind of say, oh, let me, all right, I'm going to ask for the truth about this. And very often I'll get just like a little, almost like a whisper of like a insight about it. It might even be just like 3 words, but it's like, that's the aha. Okay, now I can, now I understand it. So asking, you know, divine guidance before you go to bed, and then in the morning, really, what are my choices? What is my intention for today? So can I utilize that feeling of intention, and then at sunrise, let that just help me to mobilize. So those are just a couple of things that you can do, again, in the evening and in the morning. And again, just tapping into those energies of sunset and sunrise. And then, you know, feel free to come look at all the different graphics, all the different information. I know it can feel overwhelming because it's a lot of information, but even if every month you just spent a few minutes thanking that grandparents, or just feeling that attribute and embodying it, I think it would be really useful. Even if you just want to do the gifting friends and just send and receive love to people all over the world. There's a little map on the Facebook page where you can see where people are. So again, thank you all for joining us and being here with us. And definitely thank you, Betty Sue, for putting this together and for sharing about it so that we could have people engage with us.
Well, thank you very much. It's been lovely, been wonderful. We had really great people attending that I know are excited to learn more. And if anybody wants just some rudimentary information, like if you don't know what your birth order number is or something, I have some charts that Denny made years ago that you can just get one of, you know, and just one little chart, you can kind of look at what it means. I just wanted to add that just in doing it, I didn't know my grandparents, not any of them. But doing this work, I feel like I know them now, you know, because I know their personalities and I kind of know where they reside in my body and in this world and what they're identified with in the plant kingdom. And so sometimes we go through life and it seems rather chaotic. And sometimes a system seems too convoluted and this is way too much information. But I'm just taking a little bit at a time, and every little bit has been very beneficial. And those of you that have been in my classes know we always end up talking about birth order in some kind of way. And so I hope you'll tune into their work in the Facebook page. The graphics are out of this world. And there's just a ton of information there now. And I put in the chat that the books are downloadable for a donation or not, but I recommend a donation on the RAYID.com website. And they're beautiful, the graphics in the books that are there about birth order. And Denny, you have any closing remarks?
Wow, just remember that we're passing through in the next few hours, especially for those of you, most of you are in the Northern Hemisphere. This is a really powerful moment. We've never been here before. This is the first time ever that we've been a global community really arriving at this particular moment in time with the maximum opportunity for us to use the highest pinnacle of masculinity. So what would be the most profound use of masculinity? I'm going to give you a little bit of what came for me about 3 weeks ago, and it would be the masculinity that has the volume of a whisper. I know that sounds odd, but the masculinity that has the power of kindness, sweetness, and a sincere desire to want to help others in their development. You can choose for yourself what you do with your own masculine presence in the world, but I'm going to use mine to take that feeling back to the corridors of my own heart. That's the 6th boy or masculine attribute that I wish to increase. You are free to do whatever you want to do with yours. Betty Sue, thank you so much. We'll do this again sometime, and we might even one time sneak in some irises and have an iris evening of their own irises, not of their mates and family. But I would like those people who want to be seen will get their irises and we'll talk about them.
That would be great. I think everyone would really enjoy that aspect of it as well. After all, that's where it all started, right?
It did indeed.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. I am recording this. And so if somebody missed it and you want them to hear it, let us know and we can give them access to the recording as well. Well, okay, everybody, signing off then. Good night.
Good night.